17th episode of Palmetto Politics. I'm excited to have you guys joining us this morning. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please be sure to write those in the chats, and we will certainly uh, make sure to read those out. I'm Shannon Grady, and my co host is
John Cummings, good morning.
Good morning. So, a lot of exciting things going on in the news right now, not the least of which sons and daughters, if you will, who appear to be entering the political fray for president in 24. Everybody already knows, of course. I'll pull it up now. Everybody knows this face. That is Governor Nikki Haley, who's already launched her bid to become president in 2024. What were you saying her poll numbers were there, John?
Nationally, they weren't good. Nationally, they were down in the single digits, as is the case with most people, other than
Right.
President Trump and Ron DeSantis.
Right. So, in addition to Nikki Haley, we have already seen this gentleman making his rounds in Iowa and New Hampshire. Senator Tim Scott announced a presidential exploratory committee, which is just part and parcel to I'm running. And I think what did you call it? What was it? He's up in Iowa doing what
a
there?
listening tour.
It's a listening tour.
A listening
He's
tour.
seeing who's listening. So yeah, he was up there in Iowa, New Hampshire, kind of checking the pulse, I guess, of the folks up there. I mean, nothing to see here, folks. But yeah, he has launched an exploratory committee. I did receive a win-read email from Mr. Scott, and it said, get in on day one with fundraising. And I thought, yeah, I'm not going to be on day one, and I probably won't be on day whatever the end of it is. So sorry, Tim. I just don't think you are what we need in the White House right now. Appreciate your time in the Senate. Wish you well. This is your last term, according to you. So perhaps we'll find some position for you in a cabinet or something like that. But sorry, sir, you're not the guy we need in the White House. So that's a no for me. What about you, John? What are your thoughts on those two
Yeah,
choices?
I mean, Tim Scott. I think he does a good job in the Senate for us by and large. We've met him obviously, and he's a very personable guy. He's very likable. I'm sure when he goes out and meets and greets people, he does a great job. I mean, that's who he is. He's just a personable guy. I have some issues with Senator Scott, and I've spoken about this before regarding his support of national law enforcement legislation. As someone who is in law enforcement is not a one size fits all category. It's just not. What works in urban America when it comes to policing does not work in rural America. And his whole push to ban chokeholds, etc. I'm just against anything that tries to categorize law enforcement as a national issue, because it's not. I worked in New York City, and we could do things there. We always knew that there was backup close. So there were differences in how you police. If you're in rural America, like one of the things was banning the chokehold, obviously. When you're in rural America as a police officer and you're in a life and death situation, you can't take anything off the board. You can't. And if your choice is between having someone tap out because you're wrestling with them or shooting them, I'd surely rather have that person tap out. And your next nearest law enforcement personnel might be 10 miles away. In New York City, they're not 10 blocks away. So it's
Right.
completely different. And it's just not a one size fits all proposition. So I was strongly against that. Anything that makes the federal government bigger, I'm against. So that was one of my issues with Senator Scott. And it looks like, because it's a secret ballot, unless you come out and say it, you wouldn't know. But it looks like he voted for Mitch McConnell for minority leader in the Senate. If that's the case, that's going to hurt him tremendously with the base. So I think that Senator Scott might be looking for
Yeah.
something else. I know you were saying off the air that maybe vice president. I think that President Trump will stay away from anybody who's connected to Washington in a strong way for his running mate. But a cabinet position, certainly. I certainly think that's something that Senator Scott could do. But I don't think that. Look, I think it's President Trump's nomination to lose, and I don't see him losing it.
Yeah, I was a big, and still am a big, huge supporter of Ron DeSantis, and that was going to be my guy for 24, and I was unabashedly pro Ron DeSantis. However, the moment that the left decided to use this Soros-funded attorney general to Alvin Bragg to bring bogus charges against President Trump, it became my civic duty to support President Trump. So I am fully on board Trump 24 because, folks, quite frankly, if you allow the left to deter you from voting for Trump or anybody from putting him in office, what it tells the left is that it worked. And so the next time they have a candidate, a Ron DeSantis, a Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or Kristi Noem, whoever, that they don't want to get in the office, they'll find some way to trump up charges because, I think you've said it many times, you can indict a ham sandwich, and they'll find something that they can trump up charges with to prevent them from being able to win. So we need to put a very, very fine exclamation point on this and say, hell no, this is not how our country is going to run, and this is going to stop here and now. So we have to give Trump the support necessary to really push back against the left more than anything. Not that I think Trump is going to do a bad job, and I said all along, if the primary came and went and Donald Trump was the nominee, there's no question I'd vote for him. But I just felt like at the time, Ron DeSantis was the youthful guy. He was like Trump Jr. in my opinion in terms of his positions, because he's doing a fantastic job down there in Florida. But again, as soon as Alvin Bragg made his decision to do that dirty deal in Manhattan, I just believe it became my civic duty to support President Trump against this clear tyrannical act. And I think, if I'm hearing correctly, there was some rumblings that it was actually a little more presidential influence from Biden than he let on. So,
Oh yeah, that all came out as it always does.
yes.
Everybody says the shelf life of the latest conspiracy theories is about 90 days now. That's usually the truth comes out after a few months. But if you look at President Trump, I mean, they've been after him since he announced. Since the day he announced in 2015, they went after him. And the reason they go after him is because he's not an insider. He's over the target. They can control people who are in around Washington and even who operate at the state level because they all have connections. Trump doesn't have connections. He looked at it from the outside. He was part of the establishment from the outside.
Right.
And that's where he still is. And, I was always told, judge a person by their enemies, not by their friends. And when you look at the people that line up that want Trump out, that should tell you all you need to know about what President Trump is and what he's been doing. And everything that they accused him of what he was going to be like as president. He's going to start World War III. He's going to ruin the economy. Everything's going to crash. Well, Biden's been doing that and tenfold. Right. I mean, we're probably closer to nuclear conflict right now than we've ever been. Maybe go back to the crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're in a bad spot here.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I was watching Tucker Carlson last night, and he had President Trump on, and he was talking, and that's essentially what President Trump said, is that we're closer now to a nuclear war than we have been in a long time. So to that end, I saw this morning, I was reading through the news, and again, folks, I know that we're a Palmetto focused, absolutely, but this week, just go ahead and tell you, the House is in recess, so they're not currently in session. And the Senate is so secretive, it's very difficult to find out what, if anything, they're voting on. So we're going to try to dig into that as soon as we can. But in the meantime, I think it's very important, and it certainly affects the folks here in South Carolina. And you need to know this information. It turns out that we actually have Special Forces troops on the ground in Ukraine. They're in Kiev. They're in the capital city of Ukraine. I've been told that they are performing security responsibilities. What the hell are they securing? Pardon my French. And why and when did the Congress approve this? Did you hear about this vote, John? Because I missed it.
Yeah, nobody invoked the War Powers Act. Nobody challenged the president on it so far. We have boots on the ground, as do other NATO countries. And even though they've denied it for a very long time, those people are there. And I've heard rumblings for months that there were people on the ground there. Oh no, they're in Romania. Oh no, they're not. They're not in. Well, they're in Ukraine.
It
doesn't matter how many. Doesn't matter how many there are. The commander in chief put troops on the ground somewhere without asking for Congress's approval. And you know what? That's the problem with Congress. The War Powers Act, on its face, not to get too deep here,
it's unconstitutional.
It's unconstitutional because it's Congress has the right to declare war, and basically what it did was give Congress a political out. They don't have to vote up or down. After Vietnam, let's face it, the way we got out of Vietnam is Congress pulled the funding. Well, that was always supposed to be Congress's check on an out-of-control president. was you would just pull the funding, and guess what? The military can't operate in that theater. They just can't do it. So that basically left them an out. The War Powers Act leaves them an out, that they don't have to go up or down. The president can do some things without Congress's approval. Well, we've been through that way too many times. We haven't, I used to tell my students this
Right.
all the time. We haven't declared war since we declared war on Germany. Yet we've been in how many
Yeah.
different wars? So, and we don't need another one. And this one is going places that others don't. And of course, as you mentioned, Tucker Carlson last night, if you watched that episode, and if you didn't, we'll update you on what went on. The fact that that whole pipeline from Russia, the natural gas pipeline, the fact that it's possible that the United States is the one that took it down, well, that means we attacked NATO. I mean, yeah, and they said they were going to do it. Victoria Nuland said they were going to do
Yeah.
it, and then it happened. They said, "Oh no, we didn't do it." And President Trump was very,
Yeah.
very coy and very smart in his response when he was asked who did it. He said, "Well, look, I'm not going to tell you that we did it because I don't really know. And besides, if we did definitively do it, that puts all of our military in danger all over the world. So it's a mess."
Yeah, but I thought it was funny he said, but I can tell you who
Yeah,
didn't
Russia,
do it.
right.
Russia. Russia did not blow up their own
Yep.
pipeline, and Ukraine
Yep.
did not do it either. Because the truth of the matter is, they had a couple of experts on, and they said, look, the only countries that have the capabilities in terms of the trained personnel to go down and do that type of demolition is not Ukraine. So it wasn't Ukraine. And again, Russia didn't blow up their own. So it would have to have been, Israel obviously has that kind of special forces. The United States obviously has that. England has that. Germany has that. But none of those countries would stand to benefit from blowing up the pipeline because they needed that for their fuel for the winter, which is why their fuel prices shot up. And I don't know if I've told you this story or not. I'm going to be very careful how I say this. I have a family member who that's what they do. They literally are a demolition guy that works with the Navy SEALs. And this guy lives out on the West Coast. Don't see him very often, not on social media at all. And about, it might have been 48 hours after that explosion occurred, he appeared here on the East Coast. And we were all stunned to see him. And, my sister wanted to take some pictures, and he said, look, you can't post those on social media. You can't. My picture cannot be seen anywhere online. So we did take the pictures, and we're just, had them developed kind of thing, and, it went old school. But I know that's what he was doing. I have absolutely zero doubt that that's what he was doing. That's where he was. That is his skill set. He is an expert diver. He's an underwater diver. He's an explosive ordnance guy. I'm 100% sure of it. I literally, I'm just telling you. As soon as the moment I saw him, I said, "Wait a minute, we just had this pipe blow up, and here he is." And I was like, "Okay, we did it." And I told my husband that too. I said, "Babe," I said, "I know we did it." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because 1 + 1 is 2, and I'm telling you right now, that's what happened." And he said, "Well, we'll never be able to prove it." I said, "No, we'll never be able to prove it." But I conclusively know myself. There's no doubt in my mind that that's exactly what took place. Now, what's going to happen? Honestly, we're already at war with Russia. I mean, why are we pretending? You think Russia doesn't know we have troops in Kiev and Ukraine?
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah, they know. They know. Absolutely, they do. They have the same satellite capability we do. And to that end, I'd say this for the folks here in South Carolina. As you recall, we had the wonderful spy balloon that went over. And of course, subsequently, more and more evidence has come out to support that the Chinese did it as a spying tool, and they apparently could remote control it, and they did figure eights over our military installations across the country, and had on the balloon itself a mechanism that would self-destruct. And some folks said, "Wow, I wonder why they didn't do that." Well, why would they? They're getting all this information, and we weren't shooting them down. So,
You can't make
oh,
it up.
geez.
And the one thing
Right,
that's really
exactly.
become quite obvious since Trump decided to run for office, and then he won, and then he won again, but we won't get into that, is that the
Yeah.
deep state is real. And the fact that he tries to expose it is why they've gone after him in such a big way. You could really look at everything that's gone on really since the intelligence community, CIA, was created, after World War II. They've been running the show ever since. I mean, you go through Eisenhower warned
Yeah.
about it, but he was leaving office. Kennedy was
Yeah.
onto it, and we know what happened to President Kennedy.
Yep. They killed him.
Nixon was onto it in a big way. In fact, I don't know if people realize this, he went to Fort Detrick and basically shut down the bioweapons operation that Intel was running back in 1969. He had everybody sign a universal worldwide treaty to ban bioweapons. And we all know what they did to Nixon. I mean, they ran him out too.
Yeah.
You can think about what you want about Nixon, but
Yeah, they
everybody that
did.
was involved in Watergate was an Intel guy. Everybody, all the burglars,
Yeah.
they were all Intel guys. So that was an Intel operation. And
Hmm.
now we know that Intel tried to take Trump out. And they did pretty much.
Yeah.
So they basically run
Yeah.
the show. And why? Because he's over the target. He's right over the target, and he exposed
Well,
the whole.
wasn't it Schumer? Wasn't it Chuck
Oh
Schumer
yeah,
who said, you don't want to mess with Intel because they have the means and the capability to
yeah.
to
He
take
said the
you
quiet
out?
part out loud. He wasn't supposed to, and I'm sure that they were thrilled
Yeah.
that he said that. Right, but
Uh-huh.
that's the
Yeah.
one thing that you have to watch, and it's constant. And you can just go back through history. Anytime somebody steps out of line, and that's why they don't like Trump. You combine that with the fact that he has been successful with voting groups that don't vote Republican, and it's growing among Hispanics, among blacks.
Right.
His vote numbers are going up and up and up. His approval numbers are going up and up and up. That's why they have to stop him. He's put
Yeah.
together a coalition of people. Well, let's be honest, they used to vote Democrat, and they're not going to vote Democrat this time.
Yeah.
They see it for what it is. And like I said, what
Yeah.
used to be conspiracy is now fact after about 90 days. And honestly, with the Biden administration, it's really less than 90 days because they're not
I was
they're
gonna say
not very,
about
that's because
45,
they're not
about
very
half
good
that.
at it. They're not very good at it.
Yeah, they're terrible. Although I did have today, I saw a friend had commented, put a post up rather, and someone commented underneath, and these folks are still out there. And this person, because he was commenting, our friend was commenting that she was disappointed in Biden and what was going on with Ukraine and da 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 da. And this person underneath is a female commented and said, "Well, it's a good thing he died on inauguration day in 21, and there's an actor who's running the show right now, and pretty soon the military is going to step in and the operation will be complete." And I thought, baby, stop listening to
Yeah,
QAnon.
those are
Oh
the
my God,
those are
honey,
the
no.
conspiracies that they don't have a 90-day shelf life.
No, they don't have they
No,
never
and
expire.
you can really put together some really interesting things if 2 + 2 doesn't always make
Mm,
4, no matter
mm-mm,
what you think. But
mm-mm.
I think one of the real interesting things, I was listening to Bobby Kennedy Jr. last night, who has thrown
Yeah.
he's gonna
Who
throw his
else?
hat in the ring
Yeah, he's
as a
running.
Democrat, and I think
Yeah.
it's honestly because he thinks that he can expose big pharma and their connection to the government. It's the only way he's going to be able to do it. No, they pretty much blackballed him. Even his family doesn't talk to him. Nobody talks to him.
Right.
But he
Yeah.
made the interesting point when President Obama stopped the bioweapons program, the gain of function research. When he stopped
Yeah.
it, Fauci
Yep.
went around them, used the intel and the
Yep.
DoD, and
Yeah.
they funded labs in Wuhan and in Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it's funny you should mention that. I have a friend of mine who is a military connection. And this morning he sent me a ton of because they're trying to scrub
Hmm.
it. They're trying to show that they didn't have anything going on in the biolabs in Ukraine. And he said they're trying to scrub it now. And so he sent me links to all the documents and things. I mean, literally, I got that this morning at like 7 a.m. I haven't even had time to go through it. And again, because we primarily focus on the Palmetto State, I'm probably going to forward this on to Tracy Beans and let her kind of go through it and look it over, because it's out of my purview. Not that I'm not interested. I am keenly interested. But I want folks to understand, even though today we're talking a good bit about national politics, these are things that directly affect South Carolina. So we will occasionally have to step out and talk about some national level things just because of what impact that has on the state. We certainly can't not talk about Tim Scott, announcing a exploratory committee to run for president. And we can't ignore the fact that Nikki Haley is running, because that's a former South Carolina governor, now a South Carolina senator. So those are important things to note. But we need to understand that South Carolina has multiple military installations here, and so it is imperative that we understand the threat that it brings to the state of South Carolina when a president like Joe Biden decides to put boots on the ground in a war-torn country that is fighting against, really and truly, one of the last visuals of the Cold War, if you will, Russia. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, the curtain of the veil of, well, we're not really at war with Russia. Yeah, we are. We really are. This is this is absolutely a fact that we have special forces on the ground in the capital of Ukraine, and now, of course, they are security forces. Now, where have I heard that before? Let me think, John. There was some other war where we sent troops over there. They were called advisors, and they were secure. What was that war, John? Can you
Yeah, well,
remember?
I mean, you could pick it. You could pick from the list. I mean, Vietnam was the obvious
Vietnam,
one,
right? Yeah,
and look, that's why they went after Kennedy, because he's decided to say, "Hey, I'm not doing this.
yeah,
I'm not doing it."
yeah,
And that's why we ended up in the space we ended up in, because Kennedy obviously was eliminated,
right.
assassinated, and then Johnson stepped it up more than anybody could ever have imagined. We ended up with about 600,000 troops there
Yeah,
at one time, which was mind-boggling. And then in the middle of all of this, I don't know if people caught this as far as the Palmetto State is concerned, Senator Lindsey Graham in Saudi Arabia
yeah,
talking to the Saudis, because they have kind of coddled up with the Russians and the Chinese regarding their oil, and that was supposed to be our big friend. But of course, President Biden went over there and gave a fist bump to the Saudis, which means he didn't really want to shake their hand. So that's kind of a no-no.
yeah,
But we won't get into that. But Lindsey Graham, who is probably famous or infamous from being over in Ukraine with John McCain and saying your fight is our fight.
yeah. Well, hey, speaking of that, did you see Lindsey? I can't remember who was interviewing him. Wonderful Senator Lindsey Graham, but was being interviewed, and they asked him what his feelings were about China and Taiwan. And Lindsey Graham was emphatic. He said, "Listen, we have to be prepared to use military force to push back against a Chinese invasion into Taiwan because they manufacture 90% of our chips." And he said, do you want to live in a world where we can allow Russia to come in and take over a country? Do you want to live in a world where we can allow China to come in and take over a country? And it was Glenn Beck. That's where it was. And he said, I want, he said, I believe that, I'm willing to go fight. And of course, Glenn Beck said, that's great. We'll send you, Lindsey.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
um, yeah,
Taiwan's complicated because we have a treaty with them and we have to defend them, and
yeah,
rightfully so. And rightfully so. But that's why President Trump and his approach was so important. Was that the CCP, they weren't going to do anything on his watch, just
right.
like Putin wasn't going to do anything on his watch.
Correct.
And part of it is because I think that they think that he's a little crazy. I don't think
Yeah,
that's a bad thing.
right.
He wasn't crazy. He's just a negotiator, and when he has to be tough, he's tough.
Yeah. He's
That's just the
unpredictable.
way it is. Yeah, he told Putin, "Look, don't be playing that." And guess what? They all backed off. But now, as soon as this Biden regime got in there, all bets are off. And I guess the other part of this is the politics of it, because you probably all remember back in May of 2020 when President Trump proposed that stimulus package, $2 trillion. And look, for a small government Republican, that's a little disturbing for me, $2 trillion. But a trillion of it was COVID relief, and the other $1 trillion was intended to bring manufacturing back to the United States, chip production and
Yes.
pharmaceuticals, chip production and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So, and now what problem are we in now? We're not going to have enough chips if something goes down in Taiwan,
Well,
and
and we have a shortage of medications.
we have tons of shortages of medications, even on cancer drugs. I was reading that this morning.
Yeah.
So, everything that President Trump laid out there, one thing about President Trump, you can say what you want about him.
Yeah.
He's usually right.
Yeah.
I think his campaign slogan should be "Trump was right,"
Yeah.
because it covers just about everything.
Yeah. I believe you. That's accurate. I know that's one of the things that Tucker kind of said. He said, you've been a guy that sort of had the window into the future, and you've been right on so many issues that other politicians just got it wrong. And yeah, I understand Lindsey Graham's position. You're right. We do have a treaty with Taiwan, but again, if we had a different person in office, I don't think China would even consider invading Taiwan. Now, to that end, I want to go back a little bit. We were talking about the balloon that came over South Carolina. Now, this is just my hypothesis. So this is not even a conspiracy theory. This is just my hypothesis. In talking with my husband, my husband, for those who don't know, is a retired officer from the Army, and he was stationed in NATO. So we have a little bit more insight than your average family does in terms of what goes on over there in Belgium. But I was talking with him, and I said, how many EMPs would they need to send out to cripple the United States, and how big would they need to be? And my husband's response, he takes his oath very serious, and he is not he man OPSEC is his thing, so you're not getting anything out of him. If it was classified, he ain't telling me. So he said, well, not that big. And so I thought to
Yeah.
myself, okay, so not that big, like the size of a bread box, or not that big, the size of a suitcase, or not that big, the size of a car. I mean, what do you mean by that? And then he said something that really kind of caught my attention. He said, but truly, he said they wouldn't need to use a balloon anyway. They could just do it from space, and it would cover a greater area. So then, of course, I get online, I'm Googling, and so, yeah, they can actually emit this pulse from outer space, from one of their satellites, and cripple probably half of the country with one, and cripple the other half of the country with the other. Now,
Yeah.
let's be honest, most of the flyover states are not something they're going to be deeply concerned with, except for maybe Montana. But here in South Carolina, we have a plethora of military installations and important things. And obviously, the East Coast is where our capital is located. So it would make total sense that they would want to take out the East Coast. So this is my hypothesis. I see China. They have quote unquote said they're ready to invade by 2027. Well, I don't believe that. I think they're ready to invade now. So my suspicion is they see the writing on the wall. They recognize that Joe Biden is likely to be defeated, if not in a Democratic primary, certainly in the general election. And so their time to go into Taiwan is incrementally shrinking. But now I will say this: China is a country that plays a long game, so they'll figure it this way. Okay, if they, for some reason, they cannot get the invasion off the ground in the next 2 years, and Trump gets into office, they've only got to wait 4 years. That's going to be their mindset. Well, we only got to wait 4 more years, and then we can go in. But my suspicion is they're already doing they're weakening the U.S. dollar. Okay, so you've got BRICS, guys. If those of you don't know what that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They've already come together and agreed upon a different currency to trade in than the U.S. dollar. Now, as soon as that becomes sort of like a worldwide response, that means the US dollar is no longer the reserve currency. And I don't think folks really understand the impact that's going to have on your wallet. The best way I know to relate it is if you're a student of history and you saw what happened after World War I when Germany lost, and they literally had wheelbarrows full of Deutschmarks. They had to go use that much money to buy a loaf of bread. So imagine if you had to spend $600 to purchase a loaf of bread. That's the kind of thing we are likely to see if the U.S. dollar becomes defunct as the reserve currency, which is also why the U.S. Department, the Fed, is trying to create this CBDC, the central banking digital currency. Then we can talk about that a little bit later too. But going back to my philosophy, so I think China is likely to launch an EMP attack on the United States, which would shut us down. And if you have a car that it was built from 1980, really 1974 or 1975 to the present, it's got a chip in it somewhere, some shape, some form. Wherever you are when that EMP goes off, you will physically not be hurt, but your car is going to come to a stop. And our roads and interstates are going to look very much like they do in the Walking Dead series. Cars everywhere. And that's what it's going to be. Your phones are not going to work. Your house is going to work. Your laptops. Nothing electronic is going to work. Our electric grid is going to be done. Okay. So we're going to have a massive crisis. People stuck on the interstates, no way to call anybody. I can only hope that the police and the fire have purchased this EMP protection. Go online, folks, and look it up. You can purchase EMP protection for your vehicles. Right now, they've got it on sale for $389. However, there's a 10-week waiting list because so many people are ordering. For about $1,000, a little over $1,000, you can get one for your home. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't see a big reason to purchase it for your home, John, because if we don't have any electricity, what good is it doing to have your home protected?
And another reason not to support electric cars, battery operated vehicles.
There you go.
I had this discussion with somebody the other day, and I said, "Is your phone electric? Your cell phone, is it electric?" They said, "No." I said, "Well, what's the power?" He goes, "It's got a battery in it." I said, "And where do you get the power from?" "You got to charge it." I said, "Oh." I said, "So your phone's not electric, but your car is?" It's all how you put it out there. I guess the buried lead in all of this is, you have hearings up on Capitol Hill, and it's quite obvious that the Biden family has taken tons of money from China.
Yeah.
From the CCP. That's a fact.
Absolutely.
Again,
fact.
Not a conspiracy. It's a fact.
Fact.
And it's over, and it's millions of dollars. So he's compromised. I don't care what, he's
Yeah,
compromised. That family is compromised, and they've been doing this forever. And the media is going to cover it up just like they cover everything else up until they get to the point where eventually the media is going to have to either step up or they'll be out of business. I think they're going to be out of business, honestly.
I agree.
I don't
Yeah.
think they'll ever admit to the fact that they've been in on this the whole time. And that's
Well,
one of the reasons why I've talked about this before. That elimination of the Telecommunications Act, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that was passed by a Republican House and Senate and signed by Bill Clinton, that lifted the regulations regarding ownership of media outlets. That was the beginning of the end
yeah,
of information in this country, because
right.
basically we all know there's 5 or 6 companies control all the information all around the country, really all around the world. And it
Hmm.
used to be local ownership. And how you got good ratings on your local news was you did investigative reporting, you reported facts, you were on top of things, and you gave the people the news and they trusted you. Well, all that trust went out the window when local ownership disappeared. It just disappeared. And that's really why we have such a problem. And we've all seen that video where you have television stations from all around the country, all local television stations, running the same exact news with the same exact intro and the
Yeah,
same exact out.
verbiage. Yeah,
And
everything's
that's a
verbiage.
big
Same.
problem that we have, is that there's a limit to you have to hunt for information. Whereas
Right.
there's freedom of the press in this country was because the press is supposed to be the watchdog for the people.
Hmm.
And they've
Well,
given that up.
Ben Shapiro did an excellent, like a historical review of the press, and what he pointed out is something that I would prefer to revert back to that rather than what we have now. And previously, when we first had the newspapers and things, it was very partisan. You had one particular paper that supported, the Federalists, another paper supported the,
Alexander Hamilton. Yeah.
the Anti-Federalists. So, and you didn't have to guess where they were coming from. So you literally had the ability to take up both papers and read this one and say, okay, and then read this and say, oh, okay, and then kind of come to the middle and say, well, I agree with this, I disagree with that, I agree with some, you can make those determinations because you were eyes wide open as to what the source was trying to suggest. Whereas today you have this lunacy that it's non-biased. Well, it's not non-biased. It's clearly biased. And so people have been sucked into this belief that what they're telling them has no bias to it, that it's just we report, you decide. No, you don't. You
Yeah. Yeah. It's
indoctrinate. That's what you do. And the people need to be keenly aware that all sources, I don't care whether it's Fox News, Newsmax, One American News, MSNBC, CNN, they all have an agenda, period. All of them do. So don't be deceived, because I've heard people say, well, you got to listen to One American News, you got to listen to Newsmax because they're the only ones telling the truth. I'm like, well, they're telling a truth. I'm not saying that I certainly lean more towards a Newsmax or a One American News or Epoch Times than I do towards an MSNBC. But I am not so deluded in my thinking as to believe that they themselves do not have a particular agenda. So I go into that because I don't want to get sucked into the vortex of, well, I must believe everything they say because they are the truth tellers. No, we
yeah.
are the truth tellers today. You and I, John, the folks like us, the folks who are the average everyday citizen doing their own research, looking and seeing with your own eyes, witnessing firsthand what's going on. We, the people, are the truth tellers. That's how it is.
Yeah, and I think you have to watch for outlets that will focus on people. I mean, I watch Real America's Voice a lot. That's where Steve
Yeah, I
Bannon's
watched
show
them
is.
as well. Yeah,
I watch it a lot. And when the one thing about Bannon, and you can say what you want about him too, is that he puts people up from the left. He'll
yeah,
have people on if they'll come on. He'll have them
right.
on. And there's a lot of the people at MSNBC. They say, well, we're putting up conservatives. The conservatives they put up are a joke.
Yeah,
You know, but when you need to see
like
both sides, and they
Morning
and they
Joe is
yeah.
not a conservative,
Oh,
folks.
man, just unbelievable. But I really try to pay attention to, one of the things that's most interesting about where the media has gone and where all of this has taken us is that when you have liberals like Naomi Wolf, Bobby Kennedy Jr., you have people like that, they're really populists. Now socially they might be more liberal, but they're populists and they're coming on it, particularly in Naomi Wolf and Bobby Kennedy with the vaccine and all of that. Though when you watched those were big time liberals. I mean, can you go any more Democrat left than the Kennedys? No, not really. You know, they have that history with the Democrat Party. They completely obliterated Bobby Kennedy Jr. from the stage. You don't see, you just didn't see him. His own family doesn't talk to him. And that's why he's running for president. But that's because he didn't march along with the message. And that's what the left will do, whether you're one of their own or obviously if you're on the right side. So the media is going to squash him, and then they make him out to be a crackpot. Meanwhile, he probably knows more about what's gone on in the last 40 years with the pharmaceutical industry and the government. That's why he's running for president. And I saw a very interesting column the other day by Roger Stone, who said that he wouldn't be surprised if President Trump picked Bobby Kennedy as a running mate. Now that would make their heads explode.
I would love it. Holy cow, I'd love it.
It was a fascinating column. And his point was, you know, when President Trump, you know this, he was very good friends with JFK Jr. Very good friends. So Trump's and the Kennedys, they've been friendly for a while. And one of the first things that President Trump did was he appointed Bobby Kennedy Jr. to lead his investigation on the pharmaceutical industry and vaccines.
Right.
Because nobody knows more about that than Bobby Kennedy. Nobody. So there's a relationship there. Now, I don't know if Bobby Kennedy Jr. would do that, but it was a really, really interesting column. And that would make the left's head explode if he put Kennedy on a Republican ticket. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, hey, I'm not opposed. I literally said to myself, if ever there were a Democrat left that I would vote for, it would be, Bobby Kennedy Jr. Because I don't agree with everything he thinks, but he certainly has a lot more. There's a lot more agreement with him than any other Democrat that's currently. And I said not that long ago that John F. Kennedy, I believe, were he alive today, would not be a Democrat; he'd be a Republican.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He was, he was definitely a more of a small government. Liberty type of guy, and everybody knew that was the big difference back then. When you watch those Kennedy Nixon debates, back in '60, both of those, and they were friends. They served together, and they were both World War II guys. They both fought in World War II. They were both very strong when it came to foreign policy. Both of them. In fact, Nixon was probably stronger than Kennedy was, but they were both for a very strong United States. So, and they both were extremely patriotic Americans. I don't see that now from the left. They don't love this country like those guys. That even like George McGovern. George McGovern at 72. I couldn't stand George McGovern. I hated his policies, but you knew he was a patriot. He fought in World War II. He put his life on the line. He was a hero, but I didn't agree with him politically. Okay, but I never questioned his patriotism, or Jimmy Carter for that matter. Same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I never. I didn't agree with his policies, but you knew he was a patriotic American. I don't see that I don't see that in Biden. I don't see that in Kamala
I agree with you.
Or I don't see that in the left anymore. I
didn't see that in Obama either. Yeah, in fact, I was just thinking that, one of Kennedy's most famous quotes is absolutely diametrically opposed to the current Democratic platform. And that was famously, he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." Well, today it's all about give me free education, give me free housing, give me a free phone, free. Gimme. Nobody wants to give back to the government. They want the government to give to them. And that is a mindset that we have got to eviscerate if we want to see our nation continue to thrive. But right now we are on the decline. I would certainly agree that we may not even be considered a superpower. I've heard it bannered about that we're no longer a superpower. And I know that many of my friends who live in Europe have said to me repeatedly, "Shannon, if you guys fall, the rest of the world goes with you because you're you're sort of like the glue that holds it all together. And if we don't have you as our protectorate, then we're done." And so we are on the precipice of that right now. And so I am deeply concerned. But, kind of really quickly to wrap up what I was starting off with was, again, I see China using an EMP here. Our dollar is already going to be devalued. People are going to be stranded. Our military, I hope, and I believe they have the necessary equipment to protect against an EMP. But given who our president is, I mean, who knows? Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be sitting on the side of the road in their vehicles the same way we are. But let's, fingers crossed, hope that's not the case. And what a terrible way to go into the thought process of, well, we hope they do. And then China invades Taiwan. And what do? What can we do? There'll be limited communication. I do believe the president and, of course, the White House will have protections in place for their communication, which is great for them. I don't know if you saw this story or not, but Bloomberg foolishly said that if you were going to be in a crisis, if there was going to be any kind of a major crisis, that the place you wanted to be was in Washington, D.C., because all the resources are going to be there because you got the Capitol, you got, the White House. And I thought,
Yeah, it's not where you want to be.
dude, you're a moron.
Yeah, it's
First,
not.
you don't want to be there because if they have those resources, they're not for the citizens. They're for the people in politics, in the administration. You
No.
are not getting in, and you are going to be a target numero uno. You're going to be the number one target. So, no, thank you. I will stay right here in suburbia. And in fact, I might actually want to go a little bit more rural than even here in Myrtle Beach. So I actually was joking with my husband that I may want to keep the bicycles at my store because it's a 3.5 hour drive from here to my mom's, and it'll be a couple of days biking, and I've got tents and camp, I've got sleeping bags and all of the rest of it. And I said, well, we can always rig something up that we can go. But at this point, I am ordering an EMP protectorate for my husband's truck. There's no point in taking my Mustang. It's not very practical.
No.
Whereas my husband's truck could at least go off road and things like that, because we're probably going to have to go around vehicles that are broken down and so on. And people, you may listen and think, God, she's crazy. Well, I hope I am crazy. I hope this never comes to fruition. But I also believe,
but be prepared. Right?
Be prepared, absolutely. So make sure you got your food, your water, the things that you're going to need to be able to survive on. Because I do believe there is a time coming sooner rather than later, when we're going to have multiple shortages beyond what we already have. You mentioned that the chips as a problem, and the fact that Trump was bringing that back. And you remember what Obama said about Trump saying he was going to bring it back? He said, unless he has a magic wand, I don't see this happening. Well, clearly Trump had a magic wand because it started happening, but we didn't get it done. He didn't have enough time to complete his objectives. And we also have a huge shortage in, as you noted, cancer drugs, but just basic medications, basic aspirins, Tylenols.
We'll still have a formula
antibiotics.
shortage. There's still a formula shortage. They don't talk
Yes.
about it. They don't talk about it.
I have a brand new great nephew. He's just a month old, and my nephew and his wife are having a hard time finding the formula for him, and so they ended up having to get it, and it came from Europe.
Yeah.
Which I prefer Europe over China, absolutely. But what in the world is going on that we don't have enough formula for our kids? And then, last but not least, some of the latest and greatest news. Again, I was listening to Glenn Beck and heard this information. Bill Gates is so adamant that everybody needs this vaccine, this mRNA vaccine, that they're now going to start putting it in our food supply via the vegetables and the animals that we're going to eat. Well, so now I've got to make sure that I only shop at the farmers markets and I only buy from really small local producers, because I'm not eating your poison infested meat and vegetables. No, thank you. I'll pass.
And you mentioned Europe, and it's something else that doesn't get enough coverage. Is there has been several populist uprisings in Europe.
Yes,
several.
Currently,
France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands. And they're always just a little bit ahead of us when it comes to things like that. Not too far.
Yeah.
But the reason that Trump is despised by the globalists is because he's a populist.
Yeah.
No matter what you think about him, I know it's kind of an oxymoron. He's a man of the people who's a billionaire, but he's the first person in a very long time that put all of us, we the people, in the room. We got to listen, and we got to have some input, and he listened to people. And that's what's going on. You saw them in France. They raided the BlackRock headquarters. I mean, it's getting ugly over there, and I know it's probably going to get ugly here. I hate to say it, but we the people have just about had it. It's coming to that point where there's going to be a trigger point that's going to set everybody off, and I don't think it'll be violent in the beginning.
Right.
I think it'll be just we the people doing what we need to do, and peacefully protest. And I hope it doesn't end poorly, but part of me thinks it will, because the media is out of control.
I definitely think it will.
Yeah, the media is out of control. They put out the message that they want to. Christianity is under attack. Everything that we value is under attack. All you have to do is look at how the media handled that terrible incident in Nashville. I mean, you had 6 Christians killed because they were Christian, period. That person went into a Christian school and shot those 6 people on purpose because they were Christian. And what happened with that story? They made the person who did it the victim. That's what they did. And they covered up that whole story by having a protest in the National State House, and now they kicked the people out. They brought them back in. And what happened to the manifesto? And what happened to grieving for those 6 people? I mean, that person who did that went up and shot children in the head.
Right.
All right,
Right.
and they covered that up because of who did it.
Yep.
I mean, it shows you that the media will go to any lengths to get what they need to get out there, and they are trying to keep the populist movement down just by not allowing information to get out. But I hate to say it, it's coming. It's going to
Yeah.
happen because we the people will only take so much, and we're respectful people. We're patriots. We don't want to see that happen in this country. And that's what January 6th was all about.
Right.
And it's going to happen unless something changes very drastically, very quickly.
Yeah, speaking of what's happening in Europe, in Netherlands, they already had the fertilizer issue with the farmers. That's why they went and took their tractors and drove into Brussels, because they're taking away their ability to grow food in a manner that's necessary. They're trying to make them do organic, which it doesn't work as well because obviously you have bugs and other infestations that come in if they're not adequately fertilized and protected against that. So that was problem number one. Now they have, after all this research about cows burping and gas and all this on the effect of, I mean, to me, I thought that was rubbish already. And they had already disputed that was not logistically an issue. But apparently the governments there are now stepping in and using eminent domain to take over the farmland of these cattle farmers. So that is causing quite the uproar, as I would imagine as well.
Communism.
Yeah, and exactly. So, I mean, there's a couple of books coming out. One is already out talking about by 2033, I think it was. So 10 years from now, everything you have will no longer be yours. You will own nothing and you will love it. Well, here in the United States, we're already seeing folks saying the quiet part out loud again. They're saying, listen, we need to create enough solar and wind power to sustain our country without having to use, fossil fuels. And so in order to be able to do that, we've got to start taking land through eminent domain. So again, and what land are they going to take, John? They're going to take farmland. So what's that going to then do? Oh, well, don't worry, because we're going to have fake plant food. And, we got Bill Gates with his fake meat. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. No, that's just a no for me. That's a hard no for me. And that's where things are going to get really, really ugly.
Yeah. And part of this whole process is when Biden came in, they immediately locked down the production of natural gas. I mean, that was their big thing. They wanted to shut all that down and shut all the pipelines down. Now, when it comes to natural gas, about 60% of the product that comes forward from the natural gas process is used for fuel. The remainder, the other 40%, a lot of it is used to take the ammonia from the process, and they make nitric acid, which is what makes fertilizer.
Right.
So when you are not drilling for natural gas, you are lacking fertilizer. I mean, people don't think that way. They say, oh, yeah, the gas heats my house and all that stuff. No. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah.
That means that farmers don't have enough fertilizer, and they're doing that. Again, they're doing that on purpose. It's all part of the plan, believe me. And I know, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, it's part of the plan. They're trying to limit how people can grow food, and who owns the means of production of these, synthesized synthetic foods.
Yeah.
Gates and all of the globalists. That's exactly what they're trying to do. And again, that's why around the world, they continually try to stomp out populist movements. But it's coming.
Yeah, I absolutely, I do see that happening. And so folks, I mean, advice I'd give to you, make sure you have something other than cash, whether it's gold, whether it's silver. And right now gold has gone up so high, I'm not sure who could afford to purchase gold anyway. So if you can find silver, that's great. I'm just going to throw out a little tip to you. Look for any coins. If you saw the man called Otto, that's what triggered my memory again. I started thinking about it. If you've got dimes, nickels, or quarters that were made in 1964 earlier, those are pure silver. Keep them. They're worth more than the stamp on them, I promise you. I saw some silver dimes that were as much as $275 in value a piece. Now, if everything goes to pot, it won't be worth that. It will just be worth the weight of the silver. However, at least you'll have something to trade with. The other thing that if you want to know what you can trade is, cigarettes, sugar, flour, foodstuffs, and ammunition. Those are types of things that you can use as bartering tools in the event that something goes sideways, particularly with our currency. I kind of think that there's a good chance that this central bank digital currency thing is going to come to fruition, whether we like it or not. And John, I kind of see it this way: when the dollar goes belly up, and we're basically faced with the realization that it takes $600 to buy a loaf of bread, and most people can't afford that. That the saving, the knight in the shining armor is going to come out and say, oh, da, 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 we have created this new digital currency.
Yep.
And right now, if you join us in our new digital currency, you will get $10,000 for you, and each member of your family, regardless of their age, will get $10,000. So a family of 5, you get $50,000 right now in your bank account. Well, most people are going to be like, holy cow, yes, I'm saved. And it's instantaneous. There's no delay. Like right now, if you write a check for something, there's a couple of days delay before the money is actually transferred from one account to the other. With this new CBDC, you will not have any delay. It'll be instantaneous. And so they're going to make it look wonderful. You won't have to carry cash anymore, John, because you'll just have this digital currency. Initially, I'm guessing it's going to be on some kind of a card, or maybe on your phone, or hell, just put a chip in your hand or in your forehead.
Put the chip in your hand, yeah.
Exactly. So they'll be able to maintain your currency that way. And John, how many people do you think are going to jump in line when their kids are starving to death and they got no money?
Plenty. And then that's how they're going to create the social credit score. So if you get the economy back on track and everything, and you decide that you want to shop at certain stores, or you want to support certain political candidates and everything, they're going to know by brand or by candidate, they're going to know exactly what you are politically. And if you support these people, that's just what they do in China with the CCP.
Yep.
They will say, oh, no. You can't. If you support that person, guess what? You lose your job.
Yeah.
If you shop in this place, you lose your job.
Yeah.
So it's all a means of control. And I would just suggest, and I'm not a big time prepper. I'm not one of the, I'm not one of those guys, but I have 3 months of food in my garage.
Yeah.
Just in case. And I'm looking at generators now. I live in a townhouse, so I can't have your regular generator, just not up. But they have these indoor generators now that are basically battery charged, and they can run your house for about 72 hours. And then they have solar panels that go with them, so you can recharge at any time.
Right.
And these are things that I hate to say it, but you have to look into it just in case it all goes in the tank. I mean, I hope it doesn't. But this doesn't look too good. And like you said, the thing that makes me most nervous is that I think the CCP realizes that their window is getting smaller. It's getting smaller.
It is getting smaller, and so there's a sense of urgency for them to some degree. But again, folks, you got to remember, China is they are a long.
Oh yeah, they wait centuries. They don't care.
They don't care. So it may not happen in the 2 years, but I suspect if there were a good time to do it, now is the time. But one more thing I'll add about the digital currency that is coming. Folks, they had the French. I think it was one of the French leaders of a bank over there. I can't remember what her name was, and they used AI to create the Ukrainian president. And so she thought she was being interviewed or talking to the Ukrainian president, but it was actually an AI. But what was interesting is not so much that she was talking to a fake guy, but what she said. And what she said in talking about the digital currency is that they've already got in place restrictions on how much cash you can spend. If you spend more than 1,000, call it dollars. It's not dollars. It's euros. But you will be penalized, potentially even imprisoned. So, and she said that they were thinking about limiting. You could only spend, say, 300 or 400 or 500 euros before you had to be reported. And she said, but I find that dangerous because how the terrorists were arming themselves is they were using those credit cards that you can put more money back on. And they were doing it in increments of 300 and 500 because it's more difficult to track that way. So, well, if you have a central bank digital currency, those little cards go out the window and every penny of your money is going to be tracked. So this is just going to be another way that they say you have to go to digital currency. Now, I'm a Christian, and I know you are as well. And so the Bible speaks definitely about a time coming when you will not be able to buy or sell. So you and I don't get into the CBDC. We don't buy into the central bank digital currency. We're not one of the folks that get sucked into the 50,000 free money. So we don't buy into it. Well, we start growing our own food. We attempt to sell it to our neighbor. What can they buy it with? If they don't have something to trade with us,
Yeah, it's going to be barter system. Yeah.
Going to have to be a barter system, and then eventually they're going to say no bartering is allowed. You have to that's a black market. We can't allow black market, so you're going to get in trouble for doing that. So you will not be able to go. You and I can't. We won't be able to go into a store and purchase anything because we will not have digital currency. Okay, so we won't be able to buy. We won't be able to sell anything because only people with digital currency will be allowed to buy and sell. Now, here's the other kicker, folks. Just like John mentioned, that's how they get you with the ESG, the economic social governance, okay? Because they will be able to see exactly where you spend your money, who you give to, what you do, etc. To the point that in a centralized banking system, they can do what China already does, which is to say, I'm overweight. So let's say I pull into the McDonald's and I want to get a cheeseburger. I go to hand them my little digital currency and they go, I'm sorry, Miss Grady, you can't buy a cheeseburger. We can sell you a salad. Can't have a cheeseburger.
You're too heavy. Right.
Too heavy. Or I get ready to drive to my mom's. It's 3.5 hours away. Then I pull up to the gas tank to buy gas, and they say, hey, I'm sorry, you've already hit your allotment of gas for this week, so you can't purchase any more gas until next Monday.
Yeah, the one thing I think that the ace in the hole that we have when it comes to cash, I know they'd like to eliminate it.
Yep.
Is exactly what you said, the black market.
Yeah.
Anybody who's working, below the radar, as it were, whether it's bribes, whether it's drugs, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's just day-to-day business, you can't be paying people off digitally because then there's a trail. Yes. So the one hope that I have for cash, it's got to do with dirty business. I mean, you hate to say that, but it's the case. How do you eliminate that ability to buy and sell things that you're not supposed to be buying and selling? And that's always where cash comes in. Otherwise, if it's done digitally, if they want to get you, they'll get you. So
well, that's the other thing,
that's
John.
my lone hope for cash.
Yeah, listen. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to say, okay, if you don't have any money, we'll give you this $50,000, digital credit. But for those of you who have money, we will let you trade it in 2 to 1. For 2 of your dollars, we'll give you 1 digital currency dollar. So all of these folks that have been holding money offshore in these bank accounts, they're going to have to come clean because guess what? All of that billions of dollars will be zip of value. Yeah. So they're going to force people to come out of hiding. And then again, it's going to be strictly those individuals have the means and access to do the black market that will be able to
they'll figure out a way for the oligarchs to keep their money because that's just the way it sets up. This is completely designed to eliminate we the people, the working class. That's what they hate.
Yeah.
Globalists hate the working class. They want to eliminate the populist movement completely. And look, it's a worldwide movement.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
it will get rid of the IRS. We won't need the IRS anymore because they'll just be able to immediately take the percentage of taxes out of your digital currency. You won't have to file for taxes anymore. That'll just be zapped right out of your account. Oh, this is what you owe us. We're taking it. And those are all going to be excuses or reasons why they suggest you do this. And guess what, John? Nobody can steal your money anymore. Nobody can hold you up and say, give me your money. Well, you ain't got no money to give them. It's all digital currency. They can't take your money and spend it. So
that's what they're going to sell you on.
Oh my God. Oh, crime will go down. Illicit dealing of drugs will go down because people can't buy. We'll know what they're buying. I'm telling you, I see this coming, folks. It is coming. And it's going to sound so sweet to those who don't recognize what it is.
And that's why if you don't get involved now, you will never be able to get involved. This is something that we have to step up. So if you're thinking about, well, okay, what do? You have to start showing up at political meetings. You have to get involved. It can't just be voting anymore.
Right.
You have to take civic responsibility a lot more serious than you have in the past. It's time to step up. It's time to speak out. There's a lot of power in numbers, and the populist movement has to take off. Otherwise, we the people are not going to exist.
That's exactly right. Well, folks, that is going to wrap it up for us. Next week, we should see the House back in session, and we'll find out a little bit about what's going on in the Senate. I'm trying to get some information from our local senators. I don't know how
Yeah, good luck with
willing
that.
they will
Yeah.
be, yeah, to share with us. But we're going to try anyway. So please tune back in. We'll be back here on Tuesday morning at 9:30, and again on Thursdays at 9:30. So we'll probably have some guests next week as well to kind of let us know where things stand. But I know John and I both appreciate everybody watching, and I know that folks tend to watch us after we've aired live because of schedules, and I get that. I work as well, so I have to head from here straight to the store. But thank you for tuning in. Please go ahead and comment in Facebook, on Twitter, or you can comment on YouTube, wherever you're watching. Comment, like, share, follow us, and we greatly appreciate it. As always, God bless, Godspeed, and folks, we'll see you next time.